The night smelled of danger long before anyone realized what was about to unfold. It was the kind of night where shadows stretched unnaturally long across empty parking lots, where the wind carried whispers instead of breeze, and where a lonely runaway girl stood on a cracked sidewalk with nowhere to go and no one left to trust. She was bruised, exhausted, hungry, and completely alone, but fate has a strange way of placing broken souls exactly where they are needed most. And on that night, under a flickering streetlight, she saw something no one else noticed: a small boy being dragged toward a black van by three men who moved like ghosts with wicked intentions. In that frozen second, everything inside her shifted. Despite her fear, despite her trembling hands, despite the trauma she carried like a weight chained to her chest, she did something no one expected from someone so lost. She ran straight toward the danger. If you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps us bring more life-changing stories to the world. Her name was Lila, a 16-year-old girl who had run away from a home that never felt like one. She had lived the past 4 months drifting between abandoned buildings, shelter lines, and quiet corners where no one would ask her questions. Every night she felt smaller, unseen, and forgotten, like the world had already moved on without her. But deep inside, beneath all the layers of fear and brokenness, there still lived a spark, a stubborn, almost fragile belief that she was meant for more than suffering. So when she saw the boy, no older than 8, struggling silently while the men pressed a hand over his mouth, something inside her roared to life. Without thinking, she grabbed the closest thing she could find, a rusted metal pipe lying beside a trash bin, and hurled herself toward the kidnappers, her heart pounding louder than her footsteps. The men turned in shock, clearly not expecting interference from a thin, scared girl with nothing to her name. Lila didn't give them time to adjust. She swung the pipe with all the desperation in her bones, hitting one man across the back. He stumbled, releasing the boy, who fell to the ground and scrambled away. Another man lunged forward, grabbing Lila by her arm, twisting it painfully, but she screamed, kicked, and fought harder than she had ever fought in her life. She wasn't just fighting them, she was fighting every memory that told her she was powerless, every night she had cried alone, every voice that had told her she was worthless. With one last burst of strength, she pushed herself free and immediately shielded the trembling boy behind her, her body forming a barrier she didn't even know she was brave enough to create. The situation escalated. The thugs were angry now, furious that a skinny runaway girl had disrupted their plans. One reached into his jacket, pulling out something sharp. Lila backed up slowly, her breath unsteady, her vision blurring with fear. She knew she couldn't win. She knew she had maybe seconds left. And yet she didn't move. She stood firm because, for once, someone smaller than her needed protection. The boy clung to her shirt, whispering through tears that his daddy would come for him, that his daddy was strong, that his daddy was a biker. Lila didn't understand what that meant, not until the distant rumble began. At first, it sounded like thunder rolling over the horizon, a low growl carried by the wind. But then the sound grew louder, stronger, deeper. The ground itself began to tremble beneath them. The thugs looked around nervously, trying to understand what was happening. Lila felt the vibrations in her bones, turning her head toward the dark stretch of road just beyond the parking lot. And then she saw them. Headlights, hundreds of them, glowing like a wave of burning stars, racing forward in formation. The roar grew louder, like a storm of engines made of fire and steel. And within seconds, the night erupted into chaos. The biker club arrived in a flood of fury and thunder. The first riders skidded in, blocking every exit. Within moments, more motorcycles swarmed the lot until the entire place was surrounded by an ocean of leather jackets and roaring engines, men and women with fierce eyes, protective hearts, and a loyalty stronger than any threat. Among them was the boy's father, a towering figure with worry carved deep into his face. When his eyes found his son clinging to Lila, shaking uncontrollably, something inside him shattered. He sprinted toward them, scooping his son into his arms with a cry of relief that echoed through the chaos. But then he looked at Lila, the bruised girl who had risked everything for his child. She stood trembling, her hair messy, her lip bleeding, her eyes wide with fear that he might be angry with her. Instead, he stepped closer and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his voice cracking as he thanked her, not once, but over and over. It was only then that Lila's strength finally broke, and she collapsed to her knees, sobbing as though years of pain were pouring out all at once. The father didn't let her fall alone. he held her steady, guiding her into the warm circle of bikers who gathered around, forming a protective wall with their bodies. The thugs didn't stand a chance. Within minutes, they were surrounded, immobilized, disarmed, and handed over to the authorities. The bikers didn't need violence, their sheer presence was enough to crush any resistance. But the real story began after the danger ended. Lila had expected to fade back into the shadows, to disappear before anyone could ask who she was or where she came from. But the bikers didn't let her. They saw her. They saw her courage, her pain, her spirit. They saw a girl who had saved one of their own when she had nothing to give. They brought her into their circle, wrapped a jacket around her shoulders, gave her water, food, warmth, and something she hadn't felt in years, safety. Over the next few days, everything in Lila's world changed. The biker community treated her not as a burden but as family. The boy she saved refused to leave her side, calling her his hero whenever he had the chance. His father made sure she had a safe place to sleep, a hot meal every night, and someone to talk to. Slowly, the walls Lila had built to protect her heart began to crack. She realized she didn't have to face life alone anymore. She realized she mattered. She realized she had worth. As the story spread, people from all over came forward to thank her, to offer help, and to admire the courage of the girl who had faced evil with nothing but a rusted pipe and a heart that refused to surrender. The bikers, in turn, stood by her like a massive, unstoppable shield. When the club took her to their main gathering for a celebration in her honor, more than 9,999 bikers showed up, an entire sea of roaring engines surrounding her as she stood in the center, overwhelmed by the sight of thousands of strangers cheering her name. For the first time in her life, she felt seen. She felt valued. She felt loved. And as she looked around at the thousands of bikers gathered for her, not to fight, not to rage, but to celebrate the heart of a runaway girl, she realized she had finally found the family she had been searching for all along. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps us bring more real, emotional stories to life.